Our guest today is the superintendent of the Chicago Police Department. He has served as superintendent for 6 months. Prior to his appointment, our guest today led the Newark, New Jersey Police Department. He began his career in law enforcement with the New York Police Department 30 years ago. In the New York Police Department, our guest today served as principal crime strategist and ultimately deputy commissioner of operations. Ladies and gentlemen, Superintendent of Police for the City of Chicago, Garry McCarthy. Superintendent. All right, have some fun up here.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jay. You know, I was feeling kind of special for a minute until I realized that everybody has to come here and speak. I'll do the best I can. So, as Jay mentioned, I've been here a little bit over 6 months. And since I've been here, I get the same question over and over again. And no, it's not what happened at North Avenue Beach, although I've handled that one over and over again. What it is what are the differences between Chicago and New York City? And I've picked up a couple. First of all, you all speak funny. Second of all is the pizza, which I'll just leave it out there. It's different pizza. New York has a baseball team. Sorry, Father. All right, I'm done. And I've never seen anything like this. Aggressive pedestrians who actually think that they have the right to walk through a crosswalk. In New York City, that's a contact sport, ladies and gentlemen. And I think a couple of New York drivers could straighten that out pretty quickly out here. But that's why I have somebody drive me around all the time, quite frankly. So in getting prepared to speak today, I asked around what I should talk about. And somebody told me I could do a pretty good talk by just countering everything that Mike Shields said a couple of weeks ago. I've decided not to do that, Mike. What I am going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about my vision and Mayor Emanuel's vision for the Chicago Police Department, and kind of talk a little bit of history and where we were and where we're going and where we are today, if you don't mind. So as Jay mentioned, I had the great fortune to grow up in the NYPD. My father was a policeman, World War II Marine, that greatest generation that we all talk about, and that's where I think that we get our principles from in the first place, is our parents and our family. I had the great fortune to come out of college and join the NYPD very quickly. I hit the test just right, career service test, go up to captain in the NYPD, and I kind of thought that was the end of my career because that's where the tests ended, and I didn't have a Chinaman, rabbi, whatever the term is that we use. And lo and behold, I got really fortunate in that the methods used in the NYPD at the time changed. Bill Bratton came to the NYPD and started thinking about changing the way we do police work. And if you think about it, we used to be very reactive. We would show up after something happened, we'd try and solve a crime, we'd pick up evidence, and then we'd move on to the next event. And Bill Bratton and a fellow named Jack Maple, who became the first ever Deputy Commissioner of Operations, who was a mad genius, if you know anything about the guy. He was brilliant, but I swear he used to pull wings off of flies, and he had the magnifying glass for the ants during the summer. He's the creator of CompStat. And the shift in the thought process of policing at the time was, rather than being reactive, we were going to be proactive. We were going to measure crime, we would look at when crime was happening, how it was happening, why it was happening, and shifting authority from micromanaging a department to figuring out where it is the best level where the rubber meets the road and push down authority and accountability to those levels. So if you think about what we've been doing here in Chicago since the mayor got here on May 16th, and coincidentally, so did I, which, by the way, that was a real easy move, right? I get named on May 2nd, and I'm here on May 16th. Don't worry about what I'm doing in New Jersey. Just get here and get started. which kind of had me hit the ground running, which was actually a lot of fun. So what we've done is we've disbanded citywide units, we've implemented CompStat, we've moved cops out from behind desks. Mike, yes, some of them actually were behind desks, and put those cops into the hands of district commanders. And then we ask them what they're doing about crime. I don't tell them what to do about crime. And the cornerstones of making this happen is the CompStat system, which I'm not going to talk too much about, and the broken windows theory and the broken windows theory of crime, which real simply means you take care of the little things, you help prevent the big things from happening. It works. I'm sure you all heard it growing up. I certainly heard it from my Marine Corps father. Taking care of those little things prevents the big things. Then we measure what's happening, look at our inputs and outputs, and figure out how we're doing. So with that, we're running police departments now more like businesses. They're not the traditional hierarchical, paramilitary, slow-moving agencies that we used to be. So with that comes organizational change, right, as far as structure is concerned. And I kind of joke about it. When I got here, I looked at our table of organization, and if you put it up on the board and looked at it, it looked like that periodic chart that we all had in high school chemistry, and I still don't know where aluminum was versus where chromium was, nor did I know what a deputy superintendent was or what he had to do with the chief of organized crime control or anything else in that chart. So we eliminated a couple of levels at the top and now appointed one deputy superintendent. Al Weisinger is here. I want to acknowledge Al. He is my Mr. Inside. And created a structure where we have 6 delineated bureaus reporting right up to the first deputy superintendent. So that kind of reflects the changes that we implemented in New York City. And then the CompStat process is the engine that drives it. It's a 4-step process of knowing what's going on, having an effective tactic, a plan to address it, getting to the scene quickly and implementing it, and preventing the next crime by making a quick arrest, then assessing your plan, and if it's working, do more. If it's not working, do something else. With that, and by the way, I need to reiterate that CompStat is a process. It's not a meeting. It's a process that happens every day. The good commanders are sitting there looking at the daily ongoing crimes, tracking them, mapping them, looking at the places and the times that they're happening, and reacting to it and not waiting for a CompStat meeting to get up and have us say, what are you doing about crime? So putting those pieces in place in New York City resulted in an enormous reduction in the murder rate. In 1990, there were 2,245 people murdered in New York City. I'm going to say that again because that's an overwhelming number. 2,245 people murdered in New York City. Well, last year, New York had, I believe it was the 3rd consecutive year, where they got below 450 murders. So that's about a 75% reduction in the murder rate in New York City. So we put those pieces in place here, and we are making progress, you know, and we were doing pretty well before. Crime has been very consistently coming down in the city of Chicago for a long time. Over the last 17 consecutive weeks, we've had lower crime rates than we did those 17 weeks the year before. A lot of our command staff is here, and I'm very happy to see that they are sharing the vision and the understanding of where it is we're going. But it's not enough. It's not enough because, you know, we have an unacceptably high level of violence in this city. And quite frankly, there's a lot of work to be done. And our goal is to create the most efficient and effective department in the country and really change the way that we do police work in the country. And here's what I propose, or here's what I'm telling the Chicago police what we're going to be doing. First of all, we're going to do a complete introspection, and I've already spoken to the FOP and the various unions to get on board with this, to look at every method that we use in the department and get out that list of, if I were in charge, this is what we'd be doing. Bring it to the table. Let's take a look at it, and let's find better ways to do things. But the bottom line is we're looking at a long-term shift in philosophy. We're looking at career development. We're looking at recruitment and retention. We're looking at police legitimacy and procedural justice. Everybody thinks that deterrence, right, death penalty, tough sentencing, prevents criminals from committing crime. And there's great pools of research that show that a legitimate judicial system, starting with the police and ending with incarceration or whatever it is that happens at the other end, actually encourages people to comply with the law. There's something else called procedural justice, which is going to be part of our values, which really boils down to not what you do, but how you do it. If you have a negative interaction with a policeman and you receive a ticket, if the officer is professional and courteous and does it in the right fashion, you walk away from that encounter saying, well, I'm annoyed that I got a ticket, but the officer was certainly professional and treated me fairly. We're going to take on a couple of issues that a lot of people don't like to talk about. One of them is race and the disparate impact of crime on communities of color. And I'm going to share a couple of alarming statistics with you. The number one cause of death of young African-American males in this country is murder by gunshot. And it outweighs the next 9 categories combined. Car accidents, emphysema, heart disease, you name it. This is a big issue. Along with that comes a historic divide between communities of color and police departments, which can be overcome in a couple of fashions. I mentioned legitimacy and I mentioned procedural justice. But there's something else. You know, there are unintended consequences of some of the crime reduction strategies that we've used, and probably the best one, I don't mean to be critical of my former home, but in New York City, the stop, question, and frisk controversy, you know, we end up dismissing it saying, well, we've reduced the murder rate by 75%, so what we're doing is working, and then we have to continue to do that. I think that the biggest thing we need to do is explain what it is we're doing, and then we can probably move forward. So that's caused unintended harms in communities. And the thing that I've heard at community meeting after community meeting is, why are you criminalizing our neighborhood? And I was struck recently when I heard somebody speak, and they got a standing ovation from a middle-class African-American audience, actually a lot larger than this one, where it was Michelle Alexander talking about mass incarceration, the new Jim Crow. It was a mind-opening and an eye-opening experience for me, just how big that racial divide is, and I think that we have to address it. And the way to address it is to recognize some of the things that we've done wrong and start working on fixing those things. The other thing that we're looking at is executive development. We've come up with a career path plan for commanders and entry into the upper level of the Chicago Police Department. No longer is it going to happen behind closed doors where suddenly you get knighted. No longer is it going to happen in any forum except for a public forum through a process which legitimizes the promotion to commander, deputy chief, and chief within the department. But here's the big shift that I want to talk about, and I'm only going to take a few minutes to do this. If you think about the fact that we were able to reduce crime in the country, certainly in New York City and in most of our urban centers across the country, we've been able to do that because police leadership talks about reducing crime in partnership with our policemen who are out there doing that job every single day. The point is, we're not in control of all the causes of crime, right? The breakup of the family unit, poverty, education, just to name a couple. We could have the greatest policing strategies, the greatest implementation strategies, the greatest cops, the greatest bosses in the world, and we're never going to cure the ills that cause crime. So now we're going to kind of shift our philosophy, and everybody talks about community policing. Anybody in here have an idea of what community policing is? Just raise your hand. I think you're lying because most of you know what it is. The difference is it's going to be different from person to person to person. What it ends up being at the end of the day is you put a cop in front of my house or my store or my office every single day and make sure I'm safe. I think that community policing has to do with putting the same cops in the same neighborhood every single day so they get to know who Mrs. Jones's son is and who Mrs. Smith's son is, because they look alike, but they're definitely two different kids. Along with that, this is what we're thinking. There's so many reasons why crime happens and things that we're not in control of. And if you always continue to do what you're doing, you're going to get diminishing returns with any model that you use. There's a lot of people doing incredible work in the community, and I'm going to name them. You have community organizations like block associations and neighborhood associations. You have community service providers, the nonprofits who are out there offering social services to the community. You have faith-based organizations. You have elected officials who have the ability to bring resources. In some of our police districts here in Chicago, you have as many as 8 aldermen, okay? Each one of them does have the ability to bring resources, not just money, not just policemen, but also integrating other city services that we can have a longer-term impact on what's going on. We have businesses, and we have schools. Now, this is really the shared vision that the mayor and I have, and this is probably the greatest reason why I'm standing here. To me, bringing all these partners to the table and keying them off of our crime strategies, I think is going to have a long-term impact on crime. And I'm going to give you just 2 quick examples. The first example is the council has done a great job in moving forward in age and time frame the issue of curfew here in Chicago, and you've heard us talk a lot about it. Well, it makes perfect sense to get a kid off the street so they can't be a victim or an offender of crime. But what if we're returning that child into a bad environment in their household, into an abusive environment? What if we're returning them to a crackhead mother who happens to be, you know, the sole guardian in that particular house? Are we doing that kid a favor, or are we stopping something now which is penny wise and dollar foolish down the road? So here's what I propose, just as a quick example of how these institutions can help us with crime. What if we have a safe haven, like a church? And what if we have community service providers who now, when we pick up a curfew violator, we bring the kid to the safe haven and we ask Johnny why he's not home? Maybe mom's an alcoholic, maybe dad's abusive, maybe she's in an abusive relationship and they need help, but they're not getting it in the home. And that's the type of thing that I think is going to have a long-term effect on crime. But here's what I want to close with, and you have to forgive me, it's going to take a minute. We've got the war on narcotics in law enforcement completely wrong in this country, and we've had it wrong for a long, long time. If you think about it, what do? We attack narcotics dealers. That's what law enforcement does. We go after them, we seize product, we put it on a table, we put up an organizational chart, we say, look, we've done a great job. We arrested all these drug dealers, we seized all of these kilos of cocaine, we walk away, and by the time we turn the corner, there's somebody else standing there, right? That's because we haven't had the recognition that intelligent narcotics strategy has to do with eliminating narcotics markets one by one, okay? Law enforcement will never fix the drug problem in the United States. It is a criminalized social problem. It also happens to be illegal, and it also happens to be the cause of crime, not the crime itself. I hope you realize what I'm saying. So that narcotics dealers engage in violent disputes between each other and with their customers because of the product, because of the money, right? We all saw The Sopranos. They shoot each other over concrete, right? It doesn't matter what the product is. So drug users now will commit other crimes like robberies and burglaries to get money to buy narcotics. So think about how we've been doing narcotics enforcement. If we just take out a dealer and a series of dealers at one location, we're not affecting the market because the demand exists at that location. And as long as somebody goes to a location to buy narcotics, the supply will show back up, right? Supply and demand, simple economics. What happens if 2 suppliers show up? We might have actually caused violence by our narcotics enforcement, because now those two guys are going to be in competition for the same spot. So think about that. What can we do? Well, what we can do is, like I said, concentrate on eliminating the market, which will increase quality of life for our residents and reduce crime at those locations. So how do we do that? Well, we did it in New York by not just walking away after we locked up the drug dealers. What we did is we would hold on to the spot. So if you put a police officer there after you lock up the narcotics dealer, the person who's going to buy narcotics will now encounter a policeman instead of a narcotics dealer. And they will figure out that they can't buy narcotics there. They'll end up going someplace else. Now, it's manpower intensive. But think about this. What if we were to take all of those folks who we talked about, community organizations, community service providers, faith-based organizations, elected officials, right? Schools, businesses, and we inject into that void all of those folks to help us take that corner back. Now we paint over graffiti, we fix potholes, right? We fix streetlights, which we know has an impact on crime. Because what do the drug dealers do when they go to a corner? The first thing they do is they break the lights because they can operate in the dark. And we instill some civic pride. We apply that broken windows concept, and we don't walk away from it. What we could do is we can change that market. We could make it go away, which will increase quality of life and reduce crime at those particular locations. This will foster a greater sense of community policing. You know, we're not doing anything special by doing this, and we already have these plans underway. And this is something that the mayor is taking the lead on as far as bringing some of these other resources to the table. But what you're going to see is, you know, my dad was on Iwo Jima. He didn't like taking the same territory twice, right? So why should we be doing it? Why can't we foster a greater sense of community by marshaling the people and the resources that are already working in the community? And this is how I think we're going to change the way that we do police work in this country. So in Mike Shields' tradition, I am going to quote a rock star. I was at Madison Square Garden with a friend of mine years ago, and I saw the Rolling Stones, and Keith Richards got up to lead a song while Mick Jagger, I think, probably had to go take a nap or something. And Keith got up there, and in his best Keith Richards, he says, I'm really glad to be here. But you know me, I'm glad to be anywhere. Well, I'm not glad to be anywhere, but I couldn't tell you how happy I am to be here in Chicago, at this place, at this time. And I thank God and Mayor Emanuel for bringing me to this place. And I look forward to being here for a long, long time. So thank you for your attention. I guess I actually have to take some questions.
Pass the questions. I think you're all afraid of you. Pass the questions to Ginny. You got to work the back of the room, Ginny. By the way, we have somebody here, I believe you know, from the, what's it, the Bergen County Leader? Is that the...
Bergen County Leader?
The one, the newspaper for Newark.
Oh, no, that's the Star Ledger.
The Star Ledger.
We called it something different.
Yeah. All right, well, just hold on. By the way, while we're getting the questions, Superintendent, how have the Knicks been doing lately? I just throw that out for the heck of it. All right.
About as well as the Bears and the Giants.
Well, am I glad I'm not teaching at the academy now, because it would be a short-term run. Come on, bring him up. Bring him up. The chief is waiting, Jenny. We can't, because you know, if he doesn't answer it, I'm sure Mike will. All right, finally got one. Oh, this is good. Thanks, John. Chief, Superintendent, you know, supply and demand. Here we go. In our parking garages, when there is a break-in or a rash of break-ins, the B-Cop will not respond unless the vehicle owner files a complaint. How do we get around this? We'll leave it at that. I know it's a tough question to begin with.
Well, I'm not sure I understand it, because if you don't file a complaint, we don't know about it, we can't respond.
Well, but we who own the garages and the operators file the complaints, but the cop won't show up because the person whose vehicle doesn't want to file it. We get situations where there are a half a dozen break-ins, and we can't get a response from the police force.
Okay, repeat the question.
So the bottom line is the parking garage cannot make a complaint for somebody who owns a vehicle having their property broken into. I mean, unfortunately, that's actually legally sound. Right now, we can't get people off of other people's property unless they file a complaint. And I'm not going to tell you who those people are right now. But that's unfortunately the way that the law works. What should be happening, though, is, first of all, we want those complaints made. Because if we don't know about it, we can't fix it. But the second thing we want is we want that time frame narrowed down. And we just talked about this at CompStat last week. Auto break-ins and burglary are two very difficult crimes to solve because generally people don't see it. You're not home when your residence gets broken into. You leave at 8 o'clock in the morning, you come back at 7 o'clock at night, everything's in disarray. So we actually need those reports. I'll take a look at that with our patrol guys and figure out a way that we can actually get the time frame narrowed down, even if we don't get a formal complaint from the person who's the actual victim. Okay.
All right. We're off to a good start. Here we go. We got to get shorter names. Is this Gideon Foreman? Is that it? Gian, yes. You talked about drugs and impact on crime. What is your view on decriminalization of marijuana?
I am not a proponent of decriminalization of marijuana in any way, shape, or form. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. In New York, there was decriminalization of marijuana, and this is what it looked like. If you got caught with a truckload of marijuana, and I'm obviously stretching it here, you would get a ticket, whereas if you got caught with an ounce of crack, you would go away for 20 years. Here's what we found. Marijuana-related violence went through the roof as a result. And what we had was A1 crack dealers, which is, what do we call them, level X crimes in Illinois, were coming out of prison from the late 80s, early 90s, and the amount of violence that was included in the markup for that trade really spurred a real crime trend for us. What I do endorse is a simpler way of prosecuting that crime and getting our cop back on the street very quickly. And that's what has been widely misreported.
By the way, Ms. Preckwinkle will be here tomorrow. Maybe we could ask that question again. Here we go.
I won't come.
Chief, we got a couple of zingers here for you. I'm gently moving along. Bruce Handler, where are you, Bruce? Well, there you are. Good question. We'll have to move you up. Will you continue to support the training program crisis intervention team for the Chicago Police Department?
The short answer is absolutely. The bigger picture is we're looking at actually creating a better mousetrap where that is actually done, but it's done by a specialized cadre of people. Right now we have individuals on patrol. We're looking to enhance their abilities and create kind of like a group that is very specifically targeted in things like crisis intervention and all sorts of other issues.
You're at the City Club, and fashion is one of our strong suits, so here we go. Elizabeth Elizondo? Where are you, Elizabeth? You have two questions. I'm only answering only one to a customer. Okay. But this is a good one. Would it be possible to have the Chicago Police Department wear their vest under their shirts as they do in New York? They're going to get tougher.
You know, one of the things that I have to pay an awful lot of attention to, the first one is to be racially sensitive. And I got to tell you, Newark was a very difficult assignment for me, but that's something that I really learned in Newark. The second thing is I have to be careful which battles I pick as far as changing culture within the Chicago Police Department. I'm not a proponent of wearing a vest on the outside. At this point, I'm not going to create a policy that changes that because it's very comfortable for the officers. They love it. Everybody who I've spoken to, you know, the vest isn't just the ballistic protection. It's also, they keep radios, tasers, and attachments like that. It acts like a Batman utility belt, if you will. And the officers love it. I'm not a big proponent of it, but at this point, I'm not going to change the policy.
All right. You've warmed up enough. Here we go. Got a fellow here named Michael Shields. Where are you, Mike? There he is, raises his hand very proudly. FOP president, those of you who weren't here to hear Mike. Now I'm reading this, I'm merely the messenger. Here we go. How can you expect police to truly be proactive and bring curfew violators to safe havens when the department is short over 2,300 officers? Can you admit that the CPD has a manpower problem? That's called a sandbag.
So the answer is no, I can't admit it because I don't believe it. Sorry, Mike. And I didn't want to have these conversations in public. But as we look at the resources that are available in the Chicago Police Department, and by the way, this is not just Chicago's issue. This is New York City's issue, Detroit, Los Angeles, New Orleans, Newark. The financial impact of the global economic crisis is really hitting police departments. And I'm not a big believer in the fact that somebody loses their job and they pick on Wall Street or in the banking industry and they pick up a shotgun and start sticking up gas stations. But the way it is affecting police departments across the country is by limiting manpower resources. And this is the answer that I've given since I've gotten here. You know, I always ask, what was the study? What was the analysis that was done? Was it based on geography? Was it based on crime? Was it based on population that determined that we need X number of policemen to patrol this city? And the answer that I keep getting is the fact, well, no, it's based on budget. Well, is that an accurate determination as to how many cops we need, how many sergeants we need, how many lieutenants we need, and so on up the line? When we can take about 600 officers from behind desks and put them on the street and then disband some citywide units that represented another 400 or so to get 1,000 more cops into districts, I think it's unconscionable to ask for more policemen until such time as we reach peak efficiency. So no, I can't admit it. No, I won't admit it. And the fact is, I don't believe it's actually the case. More would be easier, obviously, right? Everybody wants more. But if it was easy, anybody could do it. And quite frankly, I don't think that's a fair thing to do to the taxpayers at this point. Mike's not clapping.
No, that's a given.
Mike, why aren't you clapping?
Mr. Superintendent, he'll do it in private. Okay, here we go. This is from, is it Darcy, Yvonne Darcy? Where are you? UIC. You know, I normally don't ask.
Pointing back, there you go.
Back there. You normally I don't take questions from other universities, but I'll, okay. What can you do about, what's that? Retaliatory killings and drive-by shootings. Take 25 words or less.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because that was a big discussion that we had just this morning. Retaliatory shootings, you know, you have a lot of facts. We have a lot of data, right? We collect data. People get arrested. Generally, they get arrested with somebody, so they become associates. This is how we put together our gang structures. Plus, by interviewing people, we can figure out that we've got the Sharks over here and the Jets over here, right? And the Bowery Boys are in between somewhere, right? And they're at war with each other. So now when a Shark gets shot, we should expect that a Jet's going to get shot. We have that intelligence. We know where they are. We know what they do. Because how do gang members make a living? Generally, they sell drugs, don't they? Right? Sometimes they do other crimes, but those are the things that they generally do. So by doing intelligent narcotics enforcement against the right people at the right places at the right times, you can prevent those retaliatory shootings. You can also prevent drive-by shootings in the same fashion, and you couple that with the whole issue of car stops, right? Police officers do a ton of car stops. And here's your alarming statistic of the day. A couple of weeks ago, actually at the end of June, it was a little bit further back, I called back to New York City, and I asked my friends how many guns had the NYPD taken off the street at the end of June. And the answer was 1,885. Chicago is 1/3 the population and 1/3 the landmass of New York City. And at that same time, we had taken 4,422 guns off the street. Now, no, well, I'm not sure. And I'm going to do the math for you. That means that per capita, we were taking 6.6 guns for every one that New York City took off the street. Now, I happen to think that we have amazing policemen here in Chicago. I also happen to think that the cops in New York City are pretty darn amazing, too. So I'm curious, and I think I know the answer to this, if we're actually better at taking guns off the street or if there's just more guns. And I think the answer is there's more guns. And we have to have gun initiatives where we work with folks to go out of state to identify gun traffickers who are bringing guns into this city, which is causing people to get killed and murdered. So there's a number of tactics we could use to get guns off the street, to stop drive-by shootings. We could do things like RICO cases. There's all sorts of different things, and you're going to see that every one of these tactics is used by us in our arsenal to get that done.
Good answer. We have 2 more quick questions. Oh, by the way, Mr. Superintendent, you've only been here 6 months, but next year we like Chicago gang names, not New York gang names. We got a lot of pride in all our players. Sharks and the Jets. All right. Couple of quickies, real fast, from Ed Mazer. Only he could ask you this question. Are you planning to take your furlough during the G8 summit? Now you're in the City Club.
There's a G8 summit coming?
There you go. Good answer. There's a fellow on the 5th floor that may have something to say about all that. And then the last one.
Well, no, I want to answer that honestly. Expect to see me out there with the cops getting the job done is what it boils down to. I think it's my job as a leader, and I don't do it enough, is to get out there with the men and women who are doing the job and show them that we're all in this together. You know, one cop gets hurt, we all get hurt is what it boils down to. So I'm not willing to shirk that responsibility, and I take it very seriously.
Last question, and this is obviously one of your guys. John Cantanzara, CPD Unit 376. Football or rugby?
Football.
There's a quick answer. How about a big round? Hold on, I got to get it.